Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. The fifth, before we start on this topic of the fifth, which is in Arabic called Al-Khums, a small story that happened in Pakistan in the 1990s. They had a prime minister called Benazir Bhutto. She was married to a man called Asif Zardari. Asif Zardari had no official post other than being the husband of the prime minister. He used his position to benefit, and that is by facilitating government resources to businessmen. In return, he used to charge 10% of any deal. The Shia have beaten Mr. Zardari by 1,000 years, as well as doubling the amount they charge. The Shia clerics charge 20%. It's called Al-Khums, which is a daylight robbery. We'll find out that it is a daylight robbery. In Sunni Islam tradition, the scope of Khums, the 20% tax, has been the Ghanaim in Arabic, which is defined as the spoils of war. So when the Muslims used to win wars, like any other army in the world, they used to take the other army or the country's resources as their ghanaim, their spoils of war. Those spoils of war were split that in the following way: 80% of it goes to the soldiers who fought, or the mujahideen, and 20% is sent to the state, the khums. This is Allah mentioned in the Quran that when you make spoils, then 20% of it will go to the messenger of Allah, to the poor, the needy, the orphans, and the wayfarers. After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, this 20% went all to the state. So the state treasury decide what to do with it. There is another 20% taken, which is from objects obtained from the sea. Like nowadays they get oil, gas, or treasures from the sea, or treasures found in land, or mineral resources, again like oil or mines of any type of it. So this is all got to do with earning which has not been a personal earning or without an effort. Nowadays, the khums, if the Muslims make khums, I mean, they're not fighting anymore now, but they've got the mineral resources and the sea resources. It's spent mainly on the poor, the needy, the orphans, and the wayfarers, as during the Prophet ﷺ. Sunni scholars say that this is not practical now to find out who is really related to the Prophet. Hence, the state added it to its treasury. So really, as I said earlier, the whole khums goes to the state treasury. In the religion of Shi'ism, not Islam, the khums means any gainful earnings. Arbah al-makasib, or business profits in English. That could be from business, wages, services, war spoils. So anything that comes to you, whether at war, at peace, you did some service to somebody, you worked for somebody, you got your own business. At the end of the day, you collect khums and you give it to the mu'ammam, the clergy or the clerics, as the Shia clerics. Now, where does this come from? Taking from people's income, 20% of their income. It was never collected from people wealth or income during the Prophet time. Nor the 11 Shia Imam ever collected the khums from their followers. The Khalifas that came after the Prophet ﷺ, from the Khulafa al-Rashidin, the Umayyads, the Abbasis, the Uthmanis, nobody ever collected khums from people. They only collected zakah, 2.5% of the savings. So we said this khums goes to the clerics. And it just happened that all of them have got black turban or white turban, and they claim to be descendants of Ali. If they're descendants of Ali, then they are entitled to the share of the khums. So they take the 20% and they say, we spent some of it, some of this is spent half of it, and we'll find out where they spend it later on the poor people. But the Shia feels obliged to pay a fifth of his income after all his expenses. What is left with him, he got to pay 20% to a Shia cleric. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Tusi, who founded Al-Hawza al-Diniyah, the religious institute at Al-Najaf in the beginning of the 5th century. That is beginning of, that means 400 Hijri, exactly 1,000 years ago, and was one of the greatest Shia scholars, has mentioned nothing about this in any of his well-known books on fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence. Although he has discussed everything else imaginable, this has led several Shia authorities, including Ahmad al-Adrabili, a faqih who the Shia called al-Muqaddas, the Holy One, to regard the taking of khums as prohibited. So by the 5th century of Islam, still nobody heard of the khums. Something new, and they made it one of the pillars of Islam as well, to make it so important. Ayatollah Kamal Haidari, he is a present-day scholar and Ayatollah, one of the top scholars of the Shia Madhab. He started recently criticizing the practices of the Shia and actually their beliefs on 2 important matters. One of them is the Mahdi, and the second one is the khums. In this video here, you could either click and listen to it, or take the link and listen to it, or watch it. But unfortunately it's in Arabic. He says taking the khums is theft. Now, can you imagine a Muslim scholar saying about zakah, a Sunni scholar saying theft? He would be declared kafir by all Muslims, whether they are scholars or lay people. This man, he calls it theft. Not a single Shia scholar opposed him and say you are wrong, you are a kafir. No, they just kept quiet. They didn't want to start a war with him that they knew he would win. In return, what they did, they colluded with the Iranians, so they kidnapped him, and he is now imprisoned in Iran. He's been there for 3-4 years. This is Sistani. Sistani, he got hundreds, if not thousands, of agents who collect the khums on his behalf. He comes originally from India, although he says from Iran, but somebody found out that originally he was from India. Wherever he comes from, he's got nothing to do with the Prophet lineage or Ali's lineage or any Arabs or anything. But he says he's like all clerics, or 99.999% of them claim to be descendants of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this got now, as I said, he's got hundreds of people who collect khums on his behalf. People like this and like this. Look how much, and like this, there are many, many centers that they collect money. Look how people, they throw money, khums everywhere. Right. Does it go to those poor people? 22% of Iraqi live in poverty. Or to those people, that's in Iraq as well? No. The khums that the Sistani collects, although he lives in a very modest house in Al-Najaf, and he claimed to not even to own the house. That's what he says. But let's see about these places These are some houses, look like palaces in Europe, belong to his relatives. So are these ones belong to his relatives, and that is where the khums goes. Because of this, the Shia clerics found it very important that it was paramount to add it to the pillars of Islam. Shia Islam is not Islam; it's a religion of its own. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.